It's always good to look at things through a different lens. Yeah, and when you look at value and prices through the paper pound or the fiat pound, things are very different than when you look at it through the price of gold. And it just goes to show that baby boomers are not to blame for our predicament. The system is to blame. The central banking fiat currency system, that based system, is to blame. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there, not just on the left, but the right, that have no idea of what's going on. So the first thing they think that will solve the problem is to tax people. But that won't work. That will accelerate things. That will accelerate the collapse. Tuesday, August 26, 2025, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. Well, there's a lot of talk here in the UK about the coming budget that will be announced sometime in October or November. The autumn statement, they call it, or for Americans, it would be the fall statement. And there's a lot of speculation about all the taxes that Rachel Reeves, our Minister of Finance or Chancellor of the Exchequer, is going to resort to. Not that she hasn't resorted already to a lot of taxation. There's even talk that they're going to tax an Englishman's castle, which is his home, with a wealth tax, and that hasn't gone down well. But it could be just kind of management of perception. They scare the public going into the statement, and then it comes out and it's not as bad. But we'll have to wait and see. But the purpose of this talk with you today is to show you that there's no way out of this except a major shift in philosophy, and I don't see that happening. And what do I mean by there's no way out? Well, there's no way out of saving a dying currency. Yes, that's what we have. And also, we are at the end game in terms of democracy. Not that I see a dictatorship coming up, but democracy always leads to bankruptcy, because you have the tyranny of the majority, basically oppressing the individual and also destroying property rights. Yes, property rights are a really important part of an economy if you're going to run it as a free market economy. And that's what we're supposed to have. But we've gone way out of this paradigm, and we're like going at a very fast pace towards the end game. So before I go through why it's going to be really tough or nearly impossible for things to be salvaged, just wanted to thank you all for your interest in the channel. We're getting more and more subscribers as usual. I think we've gone from 100,000 in May 2024 to almost 150 now. Yes, I also like to ask you, if you enjoy the videos, make sure you hit the like button, share it, and yeah, don't forget to subscribe as well. There's a lot of you out there who watch the videos but don't subscribe. I can see that through the analytics. But anyway, yes, it's a dying currency. And if you've been listening to me for many years, you know that fiat currencies always go to zero, and that the backing for fiat currencies is the debt, and that governments and states love fiat currencies because they can give the voters freebies. And that's why we are in such a predicament. Alan Greenspan, despite all his faults for being a central banker, wrote a very interesting article back in the 60s entitled golden economic freedom. And he let us know that without a sound money or gold convertible money, there is no limit to how much the state can spend. And yeah, and the people, the public, that tyranny, that majority that oppresses the individual and free markets and private property, they're in charge. And we are at a point right now that yeah, especially here in the UK, we are at the forefront, I think, of all the Western nations, and we're going to fall first. We get to a point where there's no more money. I think it was Margaret Thatcher who said the problem with socialism or statism, and it's not just socialism, it's also subsidies to and bailouts for businesses. But as she said, eventually we run out of other people's money, and Rachel Reeves is desperate to get people's money, but that's going to make things worse. So let's go through why it will make things worse. Well, number one, it will kill the private sector or the productive sector. And what does that mean? You don't have to be a PhD economist to realize what happens. Well, there's going to be the supply of goods and services is going to shrink in the economy. That's what it's going to do. And why would more taxes, especially a wealth tax on your property? They're talking about, I think, a tax on every property worth more than £500,000, which is almost all the properties in the southeast of England, or at least in the whole of Greater London. Well, that means people feel less wealthy. They have less money to spend because aside from paying their council tax, they're going to be paying the wealth tax. And I'm not sure if your house is worth more than 500 and you paid this wealth tax, whether you would be exempt from the council tax, but I don't think you will. So that's how it affects things. It will kill the economy. We're seeing already that the hospitality and pubs and restaurant sector, they've lost more than 50% of the jobs that have been lost since the last budget, where Rachel Reeves increased the tax on the national employer taxes, the national insurance for employers. Yeah, it's decimated that sector. So the more jobs you destroy, the less money there is in the economy, because people are not earning. They're on the dole and they're claiming benefits. I'm talking about benefits. We're going to come to the solution a bit later. But what's the number two here? Well, the problem with this this taxation and slowing the private sector is that the currency that has been created, the money supply that has been created in the last couple of decades with the bailout of 08, 09, with all the deficit spending that they did in 2020 with the COVID crisis, that's still sloshing around. Yes, that's still sloshing around. So what that means, there's too much money chasing too few goods. What does that do? Well, that raises prices, what people erroneously call that causes inflation. No, the inflation was created already. The inflation was created with this increase in the money supply and credit. And the Bank of England is at the center of this. It enabled the banking sector to do this. It enabled the public to borrow very cheaply. Yes, the currency and credit isn't all created by the Bank of England, but the fact that they cut rates to almost zero and they created hundreds of billions out of thin air to buy government bonds, i.e. QE, is to blame for it. So number three, what the taxes will do as well as a consequence of all these rising taxes, the rising prices or the inflation, and the reason I do that is because many people are conditioned to think that rising prices are inflation. So I don't want to confuse you. But anyway, this will lead to higher bond yields because investors, especially foreign investors, and foreign investors own about 30% of UK government debt, which is quite significant. They will want more for their investment, i.e. they will want a better return. So the secondary market will sell UK government bonds and the yields will rise, and that might attract investors. But all that will do is that will raise the government's interest expense on the debt, which is rising quite a bit already in the last 2 fiscal years that we have data for, and we're going to look at that in a minute. Number 4, and here is the big culprit. The big culprit is the central bank, the Bank of England, because did you know that we're paying billions to the Bank of England, yes, the taxpayer, for the losses that it's accruing on its portfolio of government bonds that it bought to bail out the system since 2008, yes. And I'm going to come to that data now too, and also to the interest expense. Done a little bit of research here, so you can see that interest expense as a percentage of GDP had been pretty steady, up until, let's say, 2021. You can see that after the 2008 crisis, it rose a little bit to the mid 2.5% range. Then it dropped again. But now, in the year tax year 22-23, it was 4.3%. So that was a post-war high as interest rates surged. So higher yields don't help. And then 23-24, it stabilized a little bit because they got the government bond yields under control. It's at 3.9. And the forecasts for 24-25 are not that great. They're supposed to drop to 3.7% of GDP and 3.6. But I have asked ChatGPT, I have used ChatGPT, and I asked if gilt yields were to rise 150 basis points or 1.5%. I asked what that would do for the interest expense forecast for 2026, 2027. And it's not good. It says it would raise it to around 4.2 to 4.4%. And yes, this is a really important aspect that we need to keep an eye on. It's the gilt market. And I think the UK Treasury, the government, the Bank of England, they are desperate to keep those yields from rising too much further. I think they're going to have a tough time. The bond vigilantes are back. And as I said, foreigners own a third of UK debt. And yes, the pound has rebounded this year versus the dollar, but I think it's going to turn around because our economy is in dire straits, and that could accelerate that. What about the Bank of England? The real culprits for all our woes, I think. And I'm not like saying that people, the general public, that small majority is not to blame, because they are. The democracy, the system is to blame, of course. But the Bank of England makes it possible by printing reserves out of thin air and pumping up the banking system. So I asked ChatGPT as well about the Bank of England and how much we've paid back to them in the last few years. So it says here 85.9 billion has been paid by the Treasury to the Bank of England to cover the asset purchase program, which is actually a private private limited company, and that's from 2022 to 2025, and it's expected to rise to a total of 133 billion. And just remember this, that Rachel Reeves' fiscal hole for this coming budget is 50 billion pounds. So we've given already the Bank of England 86 billion. So who had this bright idea to compensate the Bank of England for its bad investments? What were the Bank of England's bad investments? Well, buying government bonds. The Bank of England saved the day in 08, 09, and 2020. It allowed the government to borrow and pay people to stay at home and not work, and bail out people who had bought houses they couldn't afford. Yes, that's what the Bank of England's done. It's not the baby boomers that are to blame for all the wealth inequality. House prices. The leftists are saying, the baby boomers, they've got all this wealth, that's trillions of pounds of wealth in property value, but it's not. It's a symptom of a dying currency, and anything that's solid and useful, like a house, becomes worth a lot. But if you look at house prices here, and I've been doing this for many years on the channel, it's the nationwide average UK house price to gold ratio. So what does that mean? Well, it means how many ounces of gold do you need to buy the average UK house. And as you can see, back in 2004, you needed 672 ounces. So that was when UK houses were the most overvalued relative to gold. And why do I look at gold? Well, because gold is money, and has been money, and a store of value and a measure of wealth for thousands of years. So not the paper pound. Paper pound is trash. It's going to zero. But what I'm trying to say here is that Rachel Reeves will fail if she taxes property, because there isn't that much wealth there, as you can see. You only need 109 ounces of gold to buy the UK average house price. We're near the bottom there in 1982 of 90, and I think we could even go through that bottom in 1982. The data is from the nationwide, and it's since I think 1952. So yeah, it's always good to look at things through a different lens. Yeah, and when you look at value and prices through the paper pound or the fiat pound, things are very different than when you look at it through the price of gold. And it just goes to show that baby boomers are not to blame for our predicament. The system is to blame. The central banking fiat currency system, that based system, is to blame. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there, not just on the left, but the right, that have no idea of what's going on. So the first thing they think that will solve the problem is to tax people. But that won't work. That will accelerate things. That will accelerate the collapse. Enough of the problems, the solutions. The solutions aren't easy and painless. They never are, especially after this period of financialization, after this period of massive money printing, massive spending and borrowing, and very little production. We've got nothing to show for it, unfortunately. So we have to start making things, start working harder. But anyway, the first one is to slash the welfare state, and that sounds controversial. The Labour government tried that some months ago, and they almost had a revolt. So I know it's difficult, but it's the only way. And I'm not saying you cut everyone out. You leave the vulnerable, you protect the vulnerable, I would say. and you can decide what the vulnerable is. Someone more, someone in government can do that. You also slash, I'm not just against the welfare state, I'm against the corporatist welfare state. You slash all subsidies to businesses. Yes, businesses, if they're worth their salt, don't need government subsidies. A really important one, and this will be unpopular, of course, with Ad Miliband, is you scrap all that net zero rubbish. Yeah, this country is sitting on loads of coal, loads of natural gas and oil in the North Sea. You scrap all that rubbish. You deregulate everything, right? Deregulate the economy. That's the next one. Because if you deregulate the economy, if you slash the welfare state, if people can't, there's over 1 million people out there on benefits that shouldn't be. People have to start working, but you also have to make it worthwhile for small businesses to be in business. So you have to deregulate the economy, cut taxes if you can, but don't raise it, of course. And I think once the economy gets going with all this slash and burn, yes, tax receipts will rise. And then you can start thinking about cutting tax, but you've got to cut the government too. Another important one that is costing this country a lot is you stop the illegal migrants coming over, yes, and you send back as many of them as you can. I know that's a difficult thing, but it can be done. Well, another very important thing is that you slash the government bureaucracy, not just the central government, but also local government. There's hundreds of thousands of people who really do nothing and get paid for it. I mean, there's an old saying that back in the 19th century, the British Empire was run it was very lean. It only had 5,000 civil servants. So why not get back to that number? Maybe a little more. I know the population's bigger, but maybe not, because Britain doesn't have its empire anymore. So maybe we only need 2,500 civil servants. So that's the way to do it. This solution, of course, would trigger probably not a revolution, but a lot of protest. It would be politically it would be almost impossible, because democracy has spoiled the general public and the voters, because they always want something from government. And I'm not advocating this, but the only way the solution would work would be a strongman with the support of the military and law and order to put this through, almost like a dictator. Yeah, it sounds extreme, and I'm not calling for it. So what I'm trying to say here, the only time I think we will go for those solutions will be when it's too late, unfortunately. So yes, I've been warning about economic collapse in the UK since 2021. I've got a playlist here to prove it. I'm not trying to prove anything, but if you want to look at it. And I've been warning about the debt. The problem is the debt. And the only way we've been able to accumulate all the debt is that we've gone off sound money. We don't have an anchor anymore to our monetary system. Haven't had one domestically since 1931, or more exactly since the beginning of World War I. So it's a huge problem. Am I concerned about being here and having my property and it being taxed? Yes, I am. But it's interesting that this bank holiday weekend marks 33 years since I moved here from Switzerland. So England is home for me now. I have a family here. And unfortunately, or it's not really unfortunate, but I'm not like in the position of being a billionaire and being able just to move like that. And I think it's a big risk, because where do you go? Places all around the world aren't that much better than the UK. So yeah, my hope is that I've prepared well enough to survive this and come out on the other side. And yeah, one of the ways I've been doing it is, of course, living within my means, paying off debt, trying to save, not in this dying currency, of course, in gold and silver. And yeah, just keep going. And yeah, asking questions. You need to ask questions as well, because if you don't ask questions, you will buy into all the propaganda out there. So I'm going to stop right here and wish you all a great day. Take care. Bye.